Most people expect a divorce or breakup to be painful, of course. What they don't expect is for it to feel strategic, relentless, and never ending. If you're separating from someone with narcissistic traits, you're likely treating it as a transition, but trust me, they're treating it like a war. Today, you'll learn why divorcing or breaking up with a narcissistic partner follows a completely different set of psychological rules. You'll learn the mindset shifts that help you stop taking the bait and what you need to do differently, especially if you have kids and want to protect them long term. So stay tuned. Welcome back to the podcast. This one has been a long time coming. I have been threatening to write a book called How to Divorce a Narcissist for like 5 years. I am going to tell you that today's episode there's a lot of research in it as always, but this is really informed. This is when, talking to someone like me or listening to someone like me who has literally 40 years of working with different kinds of people in different ways, in different agencies, hospitals, rehabs, individually, organizations. I've worked with the police. I mean, I've worked in my career has spanned so many different types of ways to work, different countries, different states here in the United States. So I really this is when I feel really confident and good, about what I'm doing out here, because I bring a wealth of knowledge and on the ground, real experience with how to deal with this. So, and I say with love, I think a lot of people are out there talking about things and they're either not still working with people and things change, or they worked with people years ago, or they've only done research. So that's different than when you're really, again, boots on the ground working with people. So this is one of those times where I feel really good that what I'm going to tell you can really help change your life and is definitely sort of what's happening. So let's jump in. Divorcing or breaking up with a narcissist. Let's just start there. Why this isn't a normal ending and what you need to do differently. So if you're, again, divorcing or breaking up because, you don't have to have been married legally or whatever, with someone who has strong narcissistic traits, you've probably had moments where you think, oh, why is this so vicious? Why won't they just let this end? Why does it feel like they're more focused on punishing me than moving forward? Those are the things I hear the most. And let me ground you right away. You're not imagining this and you are not crazy. I know. And then you feel like the crazy one and you're, kind of maybe losing your mind. And they're like, see, you're too sensitive or you overreact or I don't know why you're getting so upset. Ending a relationship with someone who has entrenched narcissistic traits, it just doesn't follow the usual emotional or psychological rules, okay? This is not a shared transition where both people, grieve, recalibrate, and eventually sort of disengage. To them, it's a rupture that threatens their sense of identity, their control, and their very self-image. And when that happens, again, research shows that the conflict often escalates rather than resolves. And I'm going to give you a lot of research today, a lot of links to past episodes. And if this is your first time listening to me, everything can be found if you're watching on YouTube, below the video, all those things. And if you are just listening somewhere else, you can go to the website. There's always a fully written blog for every episode. You can also take notes from there, copy and paste, do that kind of thing if you just want to listen. And I have a great free download for today, and I'll get to all that. So what we have to talk about first is, what do I mean by narcissism today? Like narcissistic, I keep saying that, and what it means here and what it doesn't. Because this episode cannot be about diagnosing narcissistic personality disorder, okay? And I did an episode many years back on what narcissism is, there's 4 different types. So if you're interested in learning more, again, I'm going to link, I've done a lot of past episodes on gaslighting and microgaslighting And, are you a narcissist, or are you practicing healthy selfishness and codependency and narcissism? And I have done so many episodes. So I'm going to link to all of them, not to worry. They're all going to be there. And I highly recommend, if this stuff is hitting for you, that you go back and listen to many of those other ones, or at least read the blog. That would be another good thing. So, I'll link to it. You want to learn about what narcissism really is and all that. It's all there right out of the Diagnostic and Statistical Manual of Mental Disorders, which is what we use to diagnose people. But the truth is that most people will never receive that diagnosis. I know we throw it around a lot, but they really don't. And I don't even want to go there today, but you don't need a diagnosis for the damage to be real. So I'm going to keep saying kind of narcissistic traits, because I don't want you calling them a narcissist either. I don't want then they have something to fight against, and it gets weird when we start labeling them to them. And so, what matters for our discussion today are narcissistic traits and the relational patterns that get set up. So if that's what we're talking about today. So don't get into diagnosing them. Just notice the patterns, everything I'm talking about. If it all hits, it hits. And that's all you have to worry about. And the research consistently shows that people high in narcissistic traits really tend to struggle with empathy. They externalize blame all over the place. They have a lot of entitlement. And they really react aggressively whenever their self-image is threatened. Okay. And divorce or a breakup, think about it, is one of the biggest ego threats there is, even when they're the ones driving it. Usually it's the other person, usually the narcissist will stay with someone until they have like a new person in the wings. But they might be just not wanting to leave you, or maybe sometimes they leave, but they won't divorce you. Again, they'll torture you. So you might recognize let's talk about the patterns a little bit. Some of the patterns that I see the most are, they rewrite history. So they're always the victim. They see any boundary you put down is an attack, right? Any boundary is an attack. They feel very entitled to your time, your attention, your money, any resource you have, your emotional labor, even after the relationship ends. I cannot tell you. And let me just be clear. So I've had many, 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 many clients, and I have a few right this moment in my practice who are divorcing narcissists or have divorced, again, people with narcissistic tendencies. And I could have a support group with all of them. There's such a playbook for how narcissists act. And actually that was another episode I did that you should definitely, I kind of use celebrities in it, but I call it the narcissistic playbook. Again, I'll link to it. When they feel backed into a corner or threatened. And I'm telling you, whoever you're with is probably going to do some of these. They really retaliate when they feel exposed, or if they feel rejected in any way. And I'll talk about it in a little bit, but if your partner is also, let's say, has a drug or alcohol problem, or there's sometimes bipolar, there's sometimes other diagnoses. That's why I keep saying narcissistic traits, because no matter where it comes from, even if it's a different diagnosis that's actually happening, you're still dealing with these relational patterns. You're still dealing with this. That's why I don't like, believe it or not, Google is not a PhD. Believe it or not, life experience and all the schooling I have really do matter in what we call differential diagnosis, deciding kind of what a diagnosis is. So, and I'm saying all that so that, again, you don't get caught up in the diagnosis, but get caught up in like, here's my lived experience. So I'm going to listen to Abby if that matches. And I don't have to decide if it's, it's because they're drinking, or it's because they have this personality disorder, because you don't have to worry about the where, just that it feels this way. So in real life, these patterns might look like you saying things like, I don't think this relationship is healthy for me anymore. And them responding with something like, well, you're selfish, you're unstable, and you've always been the problem. Notice what's missing here. What's missing? Curiosity. accountability, any genuine interest in your experience. Right there, I'll say that to people. And again, as many of you know, oh, my earrings are making noise. The person who the person who edits my podcast is going to be like, Abby, the noise. Anyway, when you're missing in any relationship, if you're talking to your partner, or you're going through things with your partner, whoever that is, and they have no curiosity about you, they take no accountability ever, and they have no genuine interest in your experience and what's happening for you, that's a problem. I'm just going to say that across the board. Again, they are probably exhibiting some sort of self-absorbed narcissistic kind of tendencies. Again, doesn't mean they're a narcissist, but we should have those things. You should have those things, right? And you probably do. You've probably been curious, trying to ask questions, figure out what the problem is for years. Wrapping yourself around them, walking on eggshells, doing all the thing, right? Because you're thinking all the time, is this going to upset them? Is that going to upset them? Oh, what if I say that? You're thinking it right now as I'm telling you stuff. Yeah, very different. Some people show narcissistic behaviors, again, during like addiction or acute stress. So there can be a lot of behavioral overlap. But addiction really doesn't always explain longstanding patterns of entitlement, manipulation, lack of empathy. And no matter what, it doesn't excuse them anyway. Okay. So we're going to put that on this side. I'm going to tell you this too before I go on. So I will say the free download for today is a quiz to help you identify if you're divorcing or breaking up with someone who has narcissistic traits. So it's basically like a reality check. So listen to this episode, and then if you still have questions about whether you're maybe overreacting or not being sure if this applies, you can take the quiz, download the quiz and see what you think. And again, I'll chat about that more at the end, but this is a good time to just sort of mention that. So let's talk about why divorcing or breaking up with a narcissistic partner, is fundamentally different. Okay, so let me just start there. In a typical divorce or breakup, even a painful one, both people are usually motivated at some point. They're motivated by reducing harm. They might disagree, but they generally want to limit damage, especially if kids are involved. And they eventually reach some version of closure. And you all know I hate the word closure. I'll link to that too. I did an episode on closure. There's no closure. I'll link to that. But again, I've worked with a lot of people with a lot of different issues, drug addictions, all kinds of stuff, but who are getting divorced. But at some point, as people move on, at some point, generally, unless there's some sort of weird personality disorder lurking, people move on in some way. I'm not saying you don't think. I think about my ex-husband. I sometimes get a twinge about something, but there's no obsession. There's nothing like that. When narcissistic traits are involved, the psychological driver, it's different. That's what I need you to know. So, and again, there's been a lot of research on what we call narcissistic injury. So when they feel injured, and it shows that any kind of perceived rejection, and that it's perceived rejection, any kind of that will trigger for them shame, rage, and this need to reassert their dominance, rather than like a desire to resolve the conflict. Do you see that? I know. I spoke about that. I spoke about when someone with narcissistic traits feels backed into a corner and what their playbook looks like. Again, I really think that episode will help you a lot if this is an issue for you. But let me keep going. So instead of them asking, how do we end this as well as possible? Right? That's what you're thinking. You're thinking, how do we end this as well as possible? How do we do this in the healthiest way possible? Their underlying question is, how do I regain control and make sure I don't lose? Again, they're in a war. They are in a war. And that's why you will see smear campaigns, refusals to compromise, even when it harms the kids, endless relitigation of the past. I have two clients right now who have been divorced for years whose exes are still suing them over and over and over. They constantly are coming back to court, constantly with a new legal thing. And I will tell you what's also very common is that these narcissists either kind of represent themselves. Well, sometimes they're lawyers, right? They represent themselves, or they figure out like a cheap way. So my client is paying like a real lawyer, real money, right? They're, because they're the kind of healthier one. Trust me, narcissists do not come into therapy. Very rarely, very rarely. And if they do, they don't stay. Unless the therapist, frankly, is kind of bad and doesn't confront them, or unless they've really had some sort of aha moment that they're narcissists and want to change, which is very rare, very rare. I've had one person in my 40 years. I've had one person. That's how rare that is. And I've treated thousands of people. So just to give you an idea. But anyway, but these clients are still like, they've been divorced for years and they're still having an ex who's trying to litigate even things that have been already thrown out of court. The courts have already said, no, that you don't get this money or whatever. And they still are trying. It's horrifying. So there's usually a lot of, again, relitigation of the past or legal threats that make no practical sense at all. It's also why they may deliberately kind of provoke you emotionally. So your reaction can later be used against you. I'm going to help you with this, so don't worry. So if you keep approaching this like a normal transition, which I know you want to do so bad, you'll keep getting blindsided. Okay. Again, it's not a transition to them. It's a war. I'm going to keep saying that because you have to shift something in your soul about this. You can't keep a transition mindset when they have a war mindset. And I don't say this to scare you, because I'll also tell you that you do not want to adopt their mindset. You don't want to be in a war. And that's what I'm going to help you do today. I tell you this so you can let go of your blinders and be more realistic and strategic, because I want you to find your peace quicker. That's what I want. So there are 5 mindset shifts you need to make to get through this first. That's our first job today. Okay. There's 5 mindset shifts that you need to get through this. The first mindset shift is from wanting closure, to stability. Closure. To have true closure in a relationship, you need mutual reflection, which is why there's usually no closure. Okay. It's rare. Stability doesn't. You don't need mutual reflection for stability. Okay. You don't need them. It's you. And research shows again that individuals high in narcissistic traits, they have impaired reflective functioning, especially under threat. Most of us have impaired reflective functioning under threat, but people with narcissistic traits are way over. So if you're waiting for insight, for remorse, accountability, you're tying your healing to someone who can't provide it without destabilizing themselves. So they're not going to do it. Your stability will not come from that. It will come from your structure, your boundaries, and predictability, not any kind of emotional resolution with them. So the issue I see over and over with my clients is that they keep thinking there has to be like a final conversation, final meeting, a final email to kind of like tie something up. No. You want them to admit what they did. You want them to acknowledge how much damage this caused, or at least recognize that you weren't crazy or cruel for leaving or something. So I know, I see you. I love you so much. You say things like, oh, can we just sit down and talk this through, again, or one last time or something? Or I just want you to understand how this affected me or how it affected your children. Forget it. Each attempt you make, I know it leaves you more dysregulated than before. You know it does. I know it does because I see you in my private practice all the time, and I talk to you in our Substack group, and I, get DMs on social media. And I know you are more dysregulated every time you try, because the conversation goes in circles. The conversation gets turned into an attack on you, or ends with them storming out, and then they're going to rewrite what was said anyway. Right? They're going to rewrite all the history. So you get more and more destabilized from that. Stability means you stop scheduling emotional conversations entirely. entirely. Instead of trying to process the relationship with them, you shift to really concrete structures so that you can reduce contact with them and reduce that unpredictability. So you're creating more predictability. That looks like setting a very fixed parenting schedule, which I'll talk about, and refusing to negotiate it in real time. It looks like moving all communication to a platform, like a parenting platform, and only responding to logistics. And I'm going to say this too. I'm talking a lot about kids today. I have a whole section at the end. So if you don't have kids and you're breaking up with a narcissist or someone with narcissistic tendencies, I I'm hoping this is easier for you because there's not the kids pulling you in. But every client I've ever had who's had just a ton of problems leaving a narcissist, it's because of the children. So that's kind of a lot of what I'll talk about today. Otherwise, there's really different issues. If you're staying and you don't have kids, don't take that the wrong way. I'm not saying, oh, you're really screwed up. I'm saying you have a different screwed up, right? You have a different thing that needs to be addressed. If there's, maybe there's money it's keeping you, I don't know. But yeah, anyway, so we'll go there. So instead of saying, I need you to take responsibility for how this affected me or the kids, you would write, starting next week, exchanges will happen on Fridays at 5 p.m. All communication will go through the parenting app. That kind of thing. And I'll talk about parenting apps a little later. You're not avoiding reality. You're choosing the kind of order that actually allows your nervous system to settle. That's what we're choosing. Closure is an emotional fantasy when the other person can't self-reflect. I should make that into a bumper sticker. I mean it, right? That's the truth of it. Stability is something you can build without their cooperation. And I'm going to help you do that. We're going to talk about today. Okay. Now, second mindset shift is from being understood, you're trying to be understood, to being unshakable. A narcissistic ex doesn't need to understand. You need to move on. They don't need to understand. You just need to move on. They are trying to destabilize you so they can feel powerful again. Being unshakable means responding with facts, minimal emotions, or sometimes not responding at all. I would say often not responding at all. That is one of my favorite things for you to do. You're not being cold. You're refusing to reinforce the manipulation. I've talked about this before. She was divorcing a narcissist and, they hadn't even lived together in a while. And what she did was, because his stuff was just so incendiary that he would send these emails. And again, that's why everything should be on the app, because this stuff, it limits it. But regardless, she actually had a good friend who was a paralegal, and she had this good friend. So she set up a separate email account that this ex could only write to. She took away her personal one from him. She blocked him there, and she said anything has to go here. And she had her friend read all the emails. So anything that came in, her friend was reading. She said, I didn't even have access to the email. If it was something, she literally didn't have access to this email that she set up because she knew she'd want to go look sometimes, right? It would be just too tempting. Everything, and he didn't know this, obviously. So he would send these, 3-page, you're a piece of crap and I hate you and you turned our kids against us and all that, you're going to be alone the rest of your life and all the good things, right? And this friend of hers is the one who would see it. And the friend would just tell her if there was anything in there she needed to respond to. And then the friend would say, he did bring up this thing about money. How do you want to respond? Right. And that's how they would do it. And it gave her so much peace. I cannot tell you. I thought it was brilliant. I thought it was a great idea. I recommend it to some of my clients now who aren't using the apps for various reasons, but we'll talk about that too. The third mindset shift is you're going from short-term peace to long-term protection. And the short term, you give in a lot. Giving in to keep things calm teaches them that escalation works. I'm going to say it again. I know. You get so afraid of this person. Your nervous system gets so triggered by them. All you want to do is run and hide when they're out, right? You just want to make, yes. Just make it go away. But giving in to them teaches them that escalation works. It reinforces the behavior. It's all it does. There's a lot of research on high conflict divorce, and it shows that narcissistic traits predict prolonged conflict and adversarial behavior, even when cooperation would have benefited everyone, even themselves. They'll hurt themselves. They will cut off their nose to spite their face, as we say. They do not care. This isn't about anything except the war and winning. And winning means they own you. So long-term protection often requires tolerating this short-term discomfort, and that's what you have to get good at. I have some stuff in my Therapy to Go bundle about this. We'll talk about it later. So they asked to switch weekends again last minute, and you know from experience that saying no will trigger a blow-up, right? You tell yourself, it's easier, just give in this time so everyone can stay calm. The problem is that just this time becomes every time, Long-term protection looks like holding the boundary even when it's uncomfortable. You just say, I'm not able to change the schedule this week, and you stop engaging further. The immediate tension, of course, is higher, but the pattern doesn't get reinforced. You choose predictable stress now over this sort of endless chaos later. That's what you're doing. Okay. Mindset shift number 4 is from assuming good faith to responding strategically. Okay. Yes. In a healthy relationship, assuming good faith makes sense. Of course you would. In a narcissistic dynamic, that assumption will keep you stuck because the goal usually, again, it's not resolution for them, it's control. If every time you explain yourself, the conflict escalates or your words get twisted and used against you later, that's not miscommunication. That's a pattern. So instead of asking yourself, how do I explain this so they finally understand? Stop asking that. Stop asking that. You shift to asking yourself, what response keeps this from getting worse? Again, not in the moment, like I just said, in the moment they might, but you want this pattern to stop, right? You want the pattern to stop. So your answer is to keep your here's what I want you to do. You keep your communication factual, brief, and boring. I'll write it down, tattoo it on your ass. I don't care what. Keep your communication factual, brief, and boring. I tell people all the time, think about if you got a speeding ticket and a policeman or woman came to your window to give you the ticket. They are not screaming at you. They are not yelling at you. They do not take it personally that you were speeding on their highway, right? Nothing. Here's your ticket. That's it. That's all you're doing. Factual, brief, boring. Stop trying to persuade and start prioritizing containment. That's what I want you to do. So if they send a message that says, you're impossible to deal with and you're destroying this family, of course, your knee-jerk response is probably to defend yourself or explain why that's so unfair. They're the ones, blah, blah, blah. But that keeps you in this loop. If that comes at you, a strategic response is, pickup is Friday at 5 p.m. at the usual location. Done. No rebuttal, no emotional content, no counterattack, nada. Or maybe you hear, I just had this, the kids are upset about how you're doing this thing at your house, right? The kids are upset that we're complaining to their narcissistic tendency dad, of course, about the mom, because the mom had all these boundaries at her house and the dad didn't. And so, he was like, so you need to fix this. You need to make this better. And instead of arguing, don't argue. It's like, if you have a specific concern about the kids, please put it in writing on the platform. He had tried to end run around and not do it. He texted instead. And she even followed it up with, as I've said before, if you communicate with me via text unless it's an emergency with the children. That was the reason she had not blocked him, because she was afraid that if the kids had an emergency, he wouldn't be able to get through when they're with him. She said, if you do that again, I'll temporarily block you. So again, everything goes through the app. And then she went to the app and said, I got your text today, which said A, B, and C. And I responded with this. I'm just putting this here. And I requested that you stop texting me these kinds of things. And that's it. And then see what happens is that becomes then part of the record. Now, again, I'll talk about this, but that's why that's so important that you document. Not on a little Word document on your computer. That does you no good. In the app. Okay. I mean, it does you some good if you keep track of things if you don't have an app yet set up. But I got to tell you, they're not admissible in court generally. That's the problem. When you send this via the app, think about it. And depending on how the other person responds, they're agreeing that they did this. So they might say, I didn't text you. And then you could take a screenshot, right? And sometimes I even tell my clients, take a screenshot, put it in so that there's proof in there so they can't even try to say they didn't do it, right? That kind of thing. And obviously, if they still tried to deny it, because trust me, people with narcissistic tendencies will just lie like there's nobody's business. You can later just subpoena phone records, which will show that they texted you. So you're covered. Again, you don't agree with them. Don't apologize. You're not escalating. You're redirecting. That's how I want you to think about it. I know they get escalated, but that's not on you. You're redirecting, redirect. This isn't about being passive, by the way. To me, this is the opposite of passive. I've had clients say it to me, oh, this feels so passive. I'm like, no, this is peaceful. And it's about refusing to engage in conversations that have never led anywhere good. How is that passive? I think that's actually taking leadership. When you respond strategically instead of emotionally, two things happen. First, you protect your nervous system, which is what I really want you to do so you don't keep getting triggered. And second is you remove the reward for the provocative behavior. They get a reward when they get you, when they hook you. So over time, that's going to change the dynamic more than, trust me, any explanation ever will. It's amazing how I'm telling you this, I know, because my clients come back over and over and they're like, oh, it worked. I'm like, I know it works. I know. So I'm telling you, it doesn't always work. And please don't try this once and then have the person and go, it didn't work. I mean, this is something you have to engage with over time. You have to trust the process, but it works quicker than you'd imagine. In all cases, all of them, when I've had people do this, the narcissist backs down or they redirect that energy somewhere else. They try to figure out another way to quote unquote get you. You're again putting them in a corner, and while this is all happening, the courts have more information. I've had clients get full custody of their kids this way. I have, because the courts in the beginning, you know how charismatic they are and how wonderful, and they can just put on such a great face, but that they can't keep it. They don't. Trust me. I work with judges. I also work with judges. I have a good friend who's a judge, but I work with federal magistrate judges. And I will tell you, and have for years, and family court, I have a ton of lawyers in my practice, family court lawyers, family law lawyers, sorry. And I will tell you, they catch on. And I often have to help them because sometimes the narcissist is in their practice and they're like, oh my God, I missed it or something. You know, they realize how crazy they are. It takes a while, but they do catch on if you're not getting emotional, if you're steady. Okay. All right. Fifth mindset shift is from personal to psychological. So this isn't about love anymore. It's about ego regulation. That's what you're about. When you stop taking their behavior as evidence of your worth or your failure, your nervous system can finally settle. Okay. It can finally settle. Maybe they tell you, oh, you ruined everything. No one will ever love you the way I did. Any of that stuff. If you take this personally, it lands, of course, as a devastating statement about your worth, right? You're going to spiral. You're going to replay the relationship and you're going to question yourself, all the things I don't want you to do. Seeing this psychologically means recognizing it as a reaction to loss of control, their wounded ego, not a factual assessment of you. So instead of internalizing it, I need you to think this is about their need to feel superior, not about who I am. Now, that reframe doesn't make it painless. I'm not saying you're going to make the pain go away, but it keeps their words from taking root in your identity. And that's what I care about. That's what's important. Okay. So let's talk about when you have kids. Why, because this doesn't end after the divorce or breakup. It doesn't. If you don't want to hear this part, if you're watching on YouTube, you can skip, there's the little chapters below. If you share children with a narcissistic ex, the legal end of the marriage or relationship doesn't end the psychological conflict, right? It just changes how it shows up. That's the problem. So, and again, there's research on post-separation families, and it shows that high interparental conflict is one of the strongest predictors of poor child adjustment after divorce. Children do best not when parents agree on everything, but when when that conflict exposure is reduced, or at least one home stays emotionally steady. Now, I know what's going to happen. You're going to think, yes, that's why I just have to keep him or her calm. I just need to, say the right things because all that conflict is hurting my kids. Again, this is short-term gain. The conflict is going to keep escalating. It's not going to do what you think it does. Okay. I am telling you this from experience and from the research. When you draw, yes, initially there'll be more pain and conflict, but you'll, instead of the high conflict going on for 10 years or the rest of their little lives, it'll go on a much shorter period of time. That's what it is. Okay. So trust me, you already know that, because when they're let loose, the things you're missing is that when there's no boundaries, when they are allowed to just lie and do whatever they want. And remember, your kids are collateral damage. They don't care about them, not the way you do. They don't care about, they're a pawn to be used. You already have seen this. They quote unquote love their kids, but depending on how bad the narcissism is, they really can't love them in a way. So what you're seeing is, so what they start to do, let me not even go there. What happens is they'll say things, and I've seen this, I've had this happen. They'll say things at their home about you, and, oh, your mother is a liar. Let's say it's the father who's the narcissist, which tends to be what happens, although it can be women too. Your mother's a liar and you can't believe anything she says. I'm the only one who loves you. I've literally had people say this. Okay. This is real from my practice. That's a narcissist who's been unchecked. And you think that's not hurting your kids? You think that's not? So as you're trying to be nice and let them, just don't engage. No. So when your kid, and I've done this, when that happened, the kid came home and said something to the mom that I was working with about, didn't say those exact words to her, said something else about how she didn't love them very much because she was always quote unquote at work. By the way, she was the only one making money to support the family because he was refusing to pay child support, even though he was supposed to. So and I helped her. I said, he's saying something. I knew. I said, he's saying something at the house that came up because you've always worked, so does he. Why is it you don't love because of that? So she started asking some questions. She goes, oh, well, does dad not work? And it was her son, and her son said, yeah, well, he works. And she said, so do you think neither of us loves you? Because we work? And he, of course, got caught, right? And he said, no, well, and she said, gosh, your dad used to work even longer hours than me. Are you really not feeling like either of us loves you because we work? Let's talk about it. And this kid, right, who was parroting his dad, got really caught. And he was confused. Trust me, this poor kid was 8 years old. Trust me, little kids, they don't even, this parent is asking them is emotionally blackmailing them. You love them no matter what they do. This other parent doesn't, and they know it. So they're caught, and they're always trying to please the narcissist and not you. They're meaner to you. I know. No, I'm not. I do not have a camera in your home. This is just the same everywhere. So guess what? She went on the app and she said, hey, Johnny said this thing, and it was really disturbing to me. Can you please make, saying that I don't love him because I work. And then when I asked him about, well, does he feel that way about you? Because you work, just as much as me, he didn't have anything to say. So my concern is that you're saying something at your home that he is misconstruing. Can you please make sure that you only say positive things about me in your home as I try to do in mine? That's how I had to respond. He, of course, responds like, I don't know what you're talking about. This is you with your craziness again, trying to undermine me as a parent. He just did a whole thing. It didn't I just told her not to respond. I said, you don't have to respond to that. Again, the courts will see it later. She is saying something. You can read how she has no emotion. She's just saying the thing straight out. Like, she's just asking, right? The only answer to that, if he didn't do it, would have been, hey, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm really sorry. Of course, I will make sure that there's positive things here. I will ask and see where this came from. I'm not, maybe someone else said something. If a normal person, right, who didn't say the things, that's how they would have responded. Of course, like, oh my gosh, that feels terrible. I don't want my child to think their mother doesn't love them. That I know how bad that is for my kid. Do you see? So when they come at that, and family court judges are not idiots. And they've had a lot of experience with this. They sometimes become their own psychologists. It's funny when I do trainings for them sometimes. Different judges sort of hire me to I'm at their conferences or things like that. Don't ask me how I got in with them. It's a long time ago. But anyway, and what'll happen is they'll say, I hear them. They're like, yeah, I know. So they can only go with, even if they see something, they have to follow the law, remember. So if there's not enough kind of evidence or proof, they're stuck. But if there's a lot of evidence and proof, they're not. Now, I'm not saying there's not bad family court people, judges. I'm not saying that there's not a lot of misogyny, if you have male judges or even female judges, I'm not saying there might be racism, all kinds of things going on. I'm just saying, let's give you the best chance possible. And these give you the best chance possible of people understanding what's really going on and putting into place things that help you. So, yeah. So with a narcissistic ex, kids often become leverage. I guess that's what I'm trying to say, because they guarantee continued access to you. That's the thing. And research shows that higher rates of what we call triangulation, which is that like them telling the kids something that the kids tell you, like it's a triangle, it's not direct communication. The research shows that when you have higher rates of triangulation, loyalty conflicts, and children feeling caught in the middle in these dynamics. And that is strongly associated with child distress. It is. And again, I know what you think. You're like, oh, that's why I should be nice. And that's why I should just not say anything. Nope. Again, we're trying to stop the behaviors as much as possible. And again, I have had exes say some crazy, they will make up anything. And if left unchecked, it gets worse, not better. That's what you're missing. That's what you're missing. If left unchecked, they're bullying. Think of any schoolyard bully. Go there. If you have a bully on a schoolyard and they are just bullying and they're getting money from kids and they're taking their sneakers and their lunch money and their anything of value all the time, do they stop? Do they one day go, oh, I've had enough. I don't want to. Yeah, I guess one day maybe they grow out of it. I don't think they ever do. They just shift what they're bullying about, right? Bullies keep going until an adult or someone else with more power says stop. That's how you need to think of this. It doesn't get better. It gets worse. Bullies then, if they start to feel like they're empowered, they start bullying more people, not less. Not less. They start acting different in the classroom. They start acting more entitled at home. It goes on and on and on until someone checks them. And sometimes it's, you don't want to wait too long, right? So that's what I'm trying to tell you. I know it can feel counterintuitive in the moments because the pain is higher in a moment, but remember, long-term protection. So your kid might say, what did I have recently? Hold on, I'm trying. Oh yeah, I had again another son say to his mom again, a dad says you're the reason he's sad. That happened. Being asked inappropriate questions about your personal life. You know, dad says that your boyfriend shouldn't be around us ever. This kind of stuff, or that, dad says you should use your money. You should spend more on us. Things like that. Like you're using your money weird, or that you're in debt, or all kinds of stuff. It's so horrible. And again, you need to push back with boundaries. So and things that I see a lot are chronic schedule chaos, power struggles around school, medical decisions. Again, like subtle messages designed to undermine your authority. These are the things that come up a lot. And again, I know hearing this can be scary when you realize your kids are being pulled into the middle. The instinct, again, is to appease, to give in, to smooth things over at any cost so the conflict stops. I know you're trying to protect them. I know this makes some sort of sense. That's why I keep kind of hammering this point home. But giving in doesn't stabilize the dynamic, it feeds it. I'm going to keep saying that to you because I know what you've been doing. At least every client I've ever had has been doing. They either blow up and get really emotional and crazy, or they are like, they're either doing one side or the other. Hold on. I have to turn off my heater. I'm suddenly like sweating, getting a tan doing this. And I just realized I usually turn the heater off. So there might have been a noise in the background. My audio guy's going to kill me. Okay. But do you hear that? When a narcissistic ex sees that pressure works, the demands don't decrease, they escalate. What they experience as winning has very little to do with your kids being happy and everything to do with you being unsettled, reactive, and under their control. That's what they're trying to do. So as counterintuitive, again, as it sounds, the way out isn't more flexibility, it's more leadership. And that means holding boundaries even when it's uncomfortable. That means refusing to negotiate every crisis they manufacture. And that means shifting out of constant reaction mode. When everything in your life is a response to what they do, they're in charge. And that's the least stable position for your kids to be in. Kids don't need you to appease chaos. They need you to anchor it. They need you to anchor their lives. And again, their mindset, your ex's mindset of wanting you miserable and the kids being collateral damage is why traditional co-parenting just generally fails here. So I want to talk about why parallel parenting is often the healthiest option. Co-parenting, again, assumes goodwill, collaboration, shared goals. Parallel parenting assumes reality. Okay. I've talked before about my ex-husband, who's my kid's dad. And we had a super amicable divorce, like super, super. We did all the things. I mean, all the right things. And all the right things. I don't know that there's everything right. Sorry about that. But but I was able to do that because he was right there with me. I understand that is not generally possible. That I know that's rare. I know the way we do things is rare, right? I get it. And I can let me know under the video if you want me to do a separate episode. If you're not with a narcissist, if someone is more amenable, I can talk about how to consciously uncouple. I did do an episode on that actually, which is very much what we did. But that is not what's happening here. I know. And it's not your failure. This is just what this is. And don't let other people tell you, like, someone who's in my position who had, some divorce going, you just have to try harder, or they just don't if someone doesn't understand what's really happening, they're going to give you really poor advice. So don't listen. Okay. Listen to me. So parallel parenting is really structured disengagement. And I did an episode on how to co-parent with a toxic ex. But I'm going to do a little work here too, a little differently, and again, I'll link to that one. And each parent in this case runs their own household during their parenting time. There is minimal or no direct contact and very clear rules. I even have people who, have someone else in the family drop off or pick up the kids because of how crazy this person is. So this is common. I can think of a couple clients I've have had who have a family member drop off their kids at their ex's house and then pick them up. Like they don't let the narcissistic ex do any of the driving with the kids anywhere. They go, we'll drop them off on, Fridays at 3 and we will pick them up on Sundays at 5. Because when you give them all of that room, and the narcissist sort of likes it usually because it's like you're catering to them. They're in power and control and they love it. Like you're coming to me. I don't even have to drive the kids anywhere. Right. But what you're doing is creating something where it's an exact, like where you're in control more. Now, I have had people sit in front of their ex's house sometimes for a while, waiting for the kids, right? This is also why it's good to have someone else go and not you. If you have any family members or friends or anybody can go pick them up or drop them off, because they can go knock on the door and, say like, where are the kids? It's 5:00. And then again, you would document it later. We got there at 5 to pick up the kids. At 5:30, at 5:20, you still hadn't come out of the house. And they went and knocked on the door, and the kids didn't actually get in the car till 5:36. This is a breach of our agreement. Please have the kids ready on time. Do you know what I mean? This is a breach of our agreement. Put it in there. This is a breach of our agreement. Please have the kids ready on time. And the beautiful thing is that my client is not sitting there, because sometimes they will make it worse if because that you're who they're trying to control. If it's your mom or your sister or your friend, they don't care as much. Another really good thing to do, if you can, I've had people hire someone to go pick up the kids. I've had people hire and usually I tell them to hire a man if they can to go pick up the kids. If it's a woman with a male ex, the ex is a narcissist and he's male, having a man come can really change things. So I've had them hire someone to come pick up the kids, that kind of thing. You can do these things. Okay. You have to sort of be, you got to start to get creative. The research shows, it increasingly supports the idea that reducing contact is big, reducing ambiguity in these high conflict separations is the way to go, because it reduces your kids' exposure to this kind of chronic stress. So parallel parenting works better because it removes the fuel. That's how I like to say it. Fewer interactions mean fewer opportunities for manipulation, for conflict, for emotional harm. So, your goal isn't to have a friendly parenting relationship. Your goal is to reduce harm. That's your goal. I have a friendly parenting relationship because I have such an amicable divorce. So we have a very friendly relationship. I know. We can. You can't. I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I think of how hard divorce was, just in general, emotionally, financially, physically, my kids, stress, everything. In an amicable divorce, I can't imagine. And so my heart is with you and with all my clients and all my past clients. And it's why I'm spending so much time here, because this sucks so bad. And so I need you to be in reality, right? So let's talk about why every communication, and I mean everyone, should go through a parenting platform if this is an issue. Again, we never used a parenting platform because we didn't need one, right? But you do. This is one of the most important protective steps you can take. Moving all communication to a court-recognized parenting platform changes the entire dynamic. The one that I see the most here in the United States is My Family Wizard or Our Family Wizard. There's Talking Parents. There's Two Houses. The international clients I have, I'm trying to remember. I think there's one called App Close. You look it up in your country. They're in pretty much. I'm trying to think if I've ever had a client. I have clients in different countries. Everybody, Australia, England, Ireland. Everybody has some sort of app they can use. So you just have to find out what it is. It creates a permanent, time-stamped record of communication. Okay, and in a lot of jurisdictions, these platforms are admissible in family court. Okay, not in all, and judges frequently recommend or order their use in high conflict cases. So again, your ex, because I've had people say, well, my ex refuses to use it. I'm like, get it court ordered. Get it court ordered. You can. It's not even that hard. Courts like this because they know they don't want to deal with all they don't want you in and out of the courts, right? They want to know what's going on so they can better adjudicate. So in general, this is something that the courts will be like, yes, great idea, use that. So the key point here, it's not just that it's admissible though. That's not the key point. It's the visibility. It's that the lawyers see it. It's that the courts see it. It's that people see, and these people are bullies. They don't like when the visibility, they hate it, and they do act different. And that's what you're looking for. You're already leading in this way. And the abusive, the manipulative behavior I've seen usually decreases when the person knows they're being seen. And that alone can change how they communicate. And it also allows you to really, again, calmly document patterns over time rather than arguing in a moment. That's what's beautiful. So if you're using the platform, you might write something like, our son came home Friday and shared that you told him I'm the reason our family is divorcing and that it's all my fault. This is distressing him. This just happened with a client, a few months ago. This is distressing him. Please keep adult conversations between us and do not involve him. That's it. She got no response, by the way, for this. No response. It was crickets. She was shocked she's been using the platform a lot. We've worked together for about a year now. And so she's been using the platform like a lot. And I'm so proud of her. And guess what? Now he's just not responding. That's good. So, but they could deny it. They could say, sure, they could, who knows? It's not the point. It's you documenting what's happening. And there's now a clear paper trail of what's been going on. And that's what's great. So enough of these factual, neutral entries. I'm telling you, they create a clear pattern. If you ever need to request a custody modification, additional safeguards, a move towards sole decision-making authority for medical decisions, anything, okay? This is your ticket. And there's research on court-connected interventions. There's research on it. And it shows that documentation and structured communication are your key tools in these high conflict cases, that these are the ones that do the best. This is also why it's important to send messages through the platform, even when something like just comes up. Don't switch back to text or email. That consistency really matters. I know it's more of a pain. I know it's another step, but I'm going to repeat that. You should have no regular email ever for any purpose whatsoever. I would go so far as to tell them that they're blocked on your regular email and to only communicate with you through whatever app you've adopted. And again, they might say, well, I'm not gonna, and you're like, that's fine. So you have more control that way, not less. I would also limit or get rid of texting completely. Again, refer everything through the app. It can feel clunky at first, and they'll no doubt gaslight you in a multitude of ways, telling you that, you're creating more conflict this way. You're trying to make things, worse, and you're the one making everything so legal or formal. Excuse me. I'm going to drink my hot chocolate. Hold on. I need you to ignore all their pleas and keep things on the app or the software system or whatever you've agreed to. Keep it there. Please trust me on this. I'm telling you. And don't let even tiny things slide. Everything. Put it in. Any microaggression, put it in. Again, neutral language, be boring, but send an email on the app saying, this. I actually had a client, this is a couple years ago, who had a husband take that, again, with a man narcissist. I'm sure I have had men, I do want to say, with female narcissist wives, ex-wives, and I tell them the same things. I do want to say that, but the majority the other way. And her ex-husband actually used, look, I get inundated with all these emails. Try to use what she was writing as proof of her harassment of him, right? That she's harassing. And the judge, my client said, because she was sitting there, said the judge actually chuckled a little, and just went back and said, and the judge, who happened to be a woman, said, well, let's take a look. What is she harassing you with? And so she sort of went through. She goes, so she went through some of them that he was pointing out, and said, well, did you do this? Did you do that? Did you do this? And he tried to deny a few of them, I guess. I can't remember, what they all were, but he tried. And she said, she said, well, if you didn't do it, then you should have said it then. She goes, the fact that you didn't respond to any of these lets me know that you either felt guilty or that you were agreeing that it happened and you just weren't doing anything. She said, the part that doesn't feel good to me as the judge, she didn't use those words, is that you are refusing to respond to the mother of your children, and you're not co-parenting in any way. And so that you know what I mean? Again, this takes a while. This takes lots of documentation, but it's really interesting. So let's talk about what actually helps your kids long term. You can't make the other parent emotionally safe by sacrificing yourself, I guess is what I want to say. And again, research shows that what protects kids most is reduced conflict exposure, emotional validation, and at least one consistently regulated caregiver who has their best interests at heart. So that's all you can do. You cannot control the other household. You can't do that. And again, you are limiting their exposure to the craziness by confronting the crazy and containing it. Remember, don't stop the bully on the playground. Now, this also means that you don't badmouth the other parent, obviously, right? But you also don't deny your kids' reality. You don't correct every lie in real time. You focus on being the safe place where feelings are allowed and stability exists. Kids are really perceptive. I'm going to tell you that over time, they feel who's safe. Your job isn't to convince them today, depending on how young they are. It's to be steady enough that reality reveals itself over time. Narcissists generally fall apart over time. I'm telling you, I've seen it over and over. In the beginning, the kids side with, let's say, if it's the dad, are siding with the dad. In the beginning, they are, because, and I will tell you this, so children who are abused will often lean towards the abusive parent. And the safe parent gets all their anger and frustration. And it's a strange compliment. Okay. It's a backhanded compliment. And narcissistic parents, I know because I had one, are abusive and to their children. They are. And so, telling them your mother makes me sad is abusive. It is. It's emotional neglect at the very least. It's so selfish and self-centered and horrible. It is so not in the kid's best interest to put them in the middle over and over, right? It's a horrible thing to do. So that's abusive. So they though want their dad or their mom or whoever this other person is. And, that's their very safety. So they lean towards them. Everything's great. And also usually the narcissist has no rules at their house. So when you're little, they go to bed whenever they want and they eat whatever they want, woo. So there's a lot of, and they don't want to piss that person off because when they get mad, they get really mad and they get scary. So to them, they'll withhold their love. Narcissists will say things like that to their kids. Well, you don't deserve my love. You didn't get a good grade. You only get love when you get good grades and you're showing that you deserve love. Things like they say shit like this. It's horrifying. So the kids will, do this thing. So your job again, and I'm sorry, you'll get some more of the crap because you have a bedtime. You make them brush their teeth. You set up their doctor's appointments. You bring them to the things they don't like. You show up at the teacher all the things, right? So, but I know because I meet parents later, kids later who become adults, these kids later who become adults, and they are grateful. They figure it out. Kids figure it out. I'm telling you right now. There was a lot of stuff in my divorce that we didn't tell my children about why, and they have figured it out. They get it now. They do, and it's great. So I wasn't the one who had to tell them. Their dad wasn't. They figured out like what their dad is really about. They figured out what I'm really about. Do you know what I mean? They figure it out. So give them that space. Just know that. Just do the right thing now, which is to make a safe environment now, which means stopping the bullying as much as possible now. So what actually helps you get through this intact? Let's talk about that. What actually helps you get through this intact? Getting through this requires, I say, radical acceptance of who you're dealing with. It requires boundaries with consequences. It requires documentation instead of explanation. And I really think some kind of professional support that understands high conflict and narcissistic dynamics. I'm going to say that. You're not just grieving the relationship, you're grieving the fantasy that it could end with mutual respect. And I will tell you right now, that grief matters. It matters. It's okay. This isn't a normal divorce or breakup. It's a fundamentally different psychological reality. And when you stop trying to make it normal, you finally give yourself a chance to heal, and you really, really need that. Okay. So I think I've said enough. Wow. I know this was a long one, but there's a lot to say and there's a lot of context here. So again, the free download is Are You Divorcing or Breaking Up with Someone Who Has Narcissistic Traits? It's kind of a reality check quiz. And then if this is an issue for you, if you're listening going, yes, Abby, oh my gosh, that's me, I'm going to highly recommend you get the Therapy to Go bundle. As I always state, my Substack community, which is a paid community, online community, they get all these included in their monthly. So they pay $8 a month and they get every Therapy to Go bundle from every episode. They get live Q&As with me. They get an amazingly support. We have the best online community. Oh my God, so supportive and loving. They get early drops to the podcast and the blog. They get no ads on things. They don't have to listen to ads. I think they get a lot for $8. But if you don't want to do that, I understand. And you just want to get this bundle, it's $10. So it's not much. It's $10. So what you're going to get you'll get the free download included. So you don't have to get the download and the Therapy to Go bundle, just so you know, you'll get everything together. But it is, Am I Reacting or Being Provoked? It's a nervous system reality check worksheet for you. There's a leading instead of reacting, a boundary decision-making map for those high conflict separations. That's the next thing. Then there's journaling prompts, which are really focused on breaking that cycle of people-pleasing, appeasement, self-blame, right? There's a guided visualization for this one. I think I called it like grounding yourself when you feel like you're losing your mind. Just, my melodic voice that I know you love so much, just something you could play for a few minutes to help you when you're feeling really crazy, sort of come back to ground, to heart. And then I have a parallel parenting in practice. And what I did was I made some scripts and like kind of those micro decisions that really help you reduce the chaos. So there's like a parallel parenting special thing. All of that is in the Therapy to Go bundle if you're interested. Again, or you can just join our Substack community and get it free and get every week or included. It's not free, the $8. Personally, I think that's your better deal, but it's really up to you. And you can find everything on the website, like I said, or all the links below the video if you're watching on YouTube. And if you are watching on YouTube, please like and subscribe. If you are listening to me anywhere else, if you could leave a review for the podcast, I'd really appreciate it. The reviews are always really welcome. You can also, comment, or share there's a lot of ways to support me, which I would really appreciate, getting the word out and more people. You could follow me on social media. Um, any of that wonderful stuff would be quite lovely and I would appreciate. So that's it for this week. I'm so sorry if you're, listening this long, you are dealing with so much. I need you, I hope you really just take everything to heart that I said today and understand that it's time for a real paradigm worldview shift in your life. And I'm sorry. I wish there was, I don't sugarcoat, but I wish there was some other way I could say, oh, you could just do this, and this is what I have found works after decades of doing this with these kinds of people. So my heart goes out to you. I'm sending you so, so much love and patience and self-love and remembering that this too shall pass. And, each level you get to the next level. So that's it. All right. Oh, I love you so much. Thank you for being with me. And I'll talk to you next week.